And hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of QC Brief. I'm here once again with Michael Forian. If this is the first time here, this is the segment of the Backstage podcast where we bring you a little briefing twice a week about what's happening in the campaign. We're almost done. We have one more episode that will be launching on Election Day, which is on the 3rd of October. So just in a couple of days. We may be doing a follow-up episode after the elections just to discuss the results. But in any case, here is Michael Forian. How's it going, buddy?
Going great as I'm taking a slurp of coffee. Of course, you introduced me. Go figure. It's going well. Back in the National Capital Region as of yesterday. And as I was coming back, if this is not an omen of the election, I don't know what is, but as I am coming back into the city on my Via Rail train, we hit a moose.
I saw your tweet.
So I don't know if that's good luck or bad. Obviously not good luck for the moose. Though I did ask if we could make some moose stew.
Yeah.
With the leftovers.
Was there anything really left over? I mean,
good question.
Did you feel anything? Did you feel anything, or was it just at the end someone said, "Oh, we hit a moose and we split it in half"?
Like 60, 80K.
Yeah.
Probably faster going down the rail. Nothing. The only thing we heard was like the air pressure. There was an air pressure leak the moment it happened, but like people just thought like, oh, it's Via Rail's run down trains yet again, and no, it actually hit a moose. Go figure. So in any case, it wasn't as bad as we thought. But
is there anything more Canadian than that?
No. It's
really there isn't.
Quintessentially Canadian, and in any case, it is what it is. But so my proposal to actually make some moose stew did not go down well with the Via Rail attendant. So yeah, they have no sense of humor. That's fine.
Let's get into our news. This is the final stretch. And these last 5 days, this is the time where everyone needs to just be careful. You don't want anything surprising you to derail your campaign. Your more experienced politicians are probably being sent a message saying, listen, keep it down a little bit. Just focus on your people, mobilize, get your vote out. Just focus on the basics, avoid media as much as you can if you could. Let's just, smooth sailing until the end. It is not the case, and for a lot of parties, it's not the case. Specifically, obviously, the CAQ, the governing party, which is again in hot water with respect to immigration. Its positioning, its comments on it, its mentality in general, and this is something that has haunted Premier Legault from the very beginning of the campaign. But yesterday was the worst one, I think.
Jean Boulet coming out and saying that 80% of immigrants do not work, do not speak French, do not adhere to the values of Quebec society. This was during a debate in his region in the Mauricie on September 21st, so just about a week ago. He defended himself. He apologized. He said, I really expressed my thoughts poorly. I did a bad job. And again, this is the kryptonite. This is the kryptonite that campaigns need to avoid in that final stretch, like you mentioned. And this is what the media is looking for. I remind you, people knew this was festering for a few days because this was a debate that was also sponsored by Radio-Canada in his home riding. So this was a story that was building and building and building, and finally the trap was sprung. And the reaction from party leaders has been fairly strong. You've had, for example, accusations of being irresponsible, damaging, dangerous. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon is going further by saying the CAQ leader is in panic, saying that he's seeing an erosion of his support for the benefit of the PQ. And we can see that this is maybe there's some truth to that, or maybe it's PSPP taking advantage of recent polls. But there was a recent Angus Reid poll that came out and clocked the CAQ at 34%, which is their lowest score that we've seen throughout the campaign and even during the pre-campaign. So this is definitely having an effect here. You're seeing, for example, the Quebec Liberal leader Dominique Anglade coming out and saying that this type of, again, dangerous rhetoric. This is dividing Quebecers. They're false, accusations, and they don't reflect who we are collectively as Quebecers.
Now, just for the benefit of everyone listening or watching, this is equally important. Jean Boulet isn't just anyone. He is a cabinet minister. He initially was the minister responsible for employment and then got the file of immigration. He is the actual Quebec immigration minister saying these things. First of all, they're not factual. And secondly, how can you even think of saying something like this? Like, you're the immigration minister. One, you're supposed to know your facts, and it's not factual.
And these were questions that were specifically about immigration. These were questions about the labor shortage. And again, Boulet said that the solution is regionalization, Francisization. I hate that word in English, francisation, meaning more immigrants should settle in Quebec's regions, and the province has to ensure immigrants speak French. But then what he said next, when he was targeting, again, though that supposed 80%, which again we know is not true, we know is a made-up accusation. You even had the mayor of Montreal, Valérie Plante, calling for Boulet to retract his comments, saying that they contradict all the work that's being done to help new arrivals integrate into Quebec. Montreal is this welcoming place for immigrants. Immigrants contribute to the economic, social, cultural vitality, and what makes Montreal, Quebec, and our place in North America so dynamic, and that's a really good thing. So there have also been calls from other parties like Bloc Montréal, Balarama Holness, the leader of this new upstart party, for Boulet to resign. I don't think that will be the case. I don't think that will be the case right now. I don't think we're seeing the same type of result of, for example, what happened in the riding of Camille Lorrain with the Quebec Solidaire candidate over there, who was taking...
that was illegal. What she did.
That was illegal.
So, yeah,
but perception is everything, right?
This is just a huge blunder.
Yeah, but but like we said, it's the final stretch of the campaign, and some people are saying, maybe the only way for Legault to disband and disassociate himself with Boulet's comments is to get away from it completely.
Well, let's get to Premier Legault, because and you're right. At this stage in the campaign, the reaction needs to be immediate and it needs to be direct. And he did that. He came out and said, "Listen, in the next government, Jean Boulet will not be Minister of Immigration." So he kind of, by saying that, and that's like, you rarely see that happening in a campaign where the leader of a party is actually indicating who will or who will not be a minister. That never really happens, right? But he came out and said it, and he was categorical. He said, listen, he will no longer, I think precisely he said, well, he just disqualified himself from being immigration minister.
Exactly.
I think that,
and probably cabinet for this point.
That's what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I was going to say. And he wouldn't say that live or publicly, before the end of the campaign. But it wouldn't shock me if, when he's composing his new cabinet, Jean Boulet will probably not be seeing a spot for himself in there. It's a huge mistake. It's a horrible mistake coming from a minister that should know his stuff, should know his numbers. I think that it's not really a mistake. I think that it was purposeful misinformation. That's all it was. And to think it's dumb, Michael. It's dumb when you know that Radio Canada is there recording everything.
Yeah.
What?
Well, are you?
It's not a little debate in the basement of a church where you have 50 people, and chances are no one ever is going to hear about it. What are you doing?
When you're, but this is the sub messaging towards different parts of Quebec, and in particular a region like Mauricie, where this type of rhetoric works. To a certain degree, some people will take offense, but I think a good portion of them, maybe even the majority, will say, you know what, he's not too far off. Montreal is really disconnected from my hometown here in the Mauricie, and I just don't see any affinity with them whatsoever. You know what? I like it when my candidate shits all over Montreal, because I hate Montreal too. Yeah. And those Montrealers, they all, always, thinking that they're better than us. Those elites, and don't even get me started on those Anglophones over there. But the immigrants are just the worst, and that is what I think a lot of people, again, not I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but I do think that there is a certain recipe that works in this regard, and a certain recipe that works when you're tapping into the worst possible types of rhetoric that again, people find a certain level of affinity with. And you mentioned Legault himself. Legault, he was speaking at the Montreal Chamber of Commerce this week. He was under fire just yesterday for making comments that he said he said basically he was trying to defend the CAC's policy of keeping a lid on those numbers of new arrivals. But he said, people say, where did you draw this idea about the capacity to integrate from? And he says, looking at the most recent numbers, they're clear. There's a decline. So if we use the same recipe, it's going to produce the same cake. What we say is stick with 50,000, but be more demanding on the knowledge of French. And until we have stopped the decline of French, I think that for the Quebec nation, which wants to protect French, it would be a bit suicidal to increase it.
This is like the fact that both these things came out the same day. I mean, it has rocked the campaign completely. That's all the media have been talking about. Up until now, every party has had its own position on the numbers of new immigrants to accept. The Liberals are anywhere between 50 and 70. The PQ is under 50, closer to 30. The CAQ wants to maintain 50. Quebec Solidaire is somewhat aligned with the Liberal Party, and for different reasons that from the beginning of the campaign have been accepted. I mean, it's your platform, it's your opinion. That's fine, and so far it hasn't been an issue.
But George,
now it feels like they're on the defensive. It's like, listen, we bring more immigrants in. They're not going to learn French. They're not aligned with our values, one guy says. And the other guy says, well, you bring more, it's suicidal for the nation of Quebec, meaning that what? We're going to kill ourselves because I'm not so sure he knew what he was saying, like always. I mean, he opens his mouth and stuff comes out without him thinking about them. But if you put it down literally, what he said is that the Quebecers are going to die, kill themselves if more immigrants come here.
But George, we've been saying, and we've been asserting that what Legault said is false. We've been asserting that what the CAC policy is it's wrong and it's divisive. But just let's look at the facts and let's look at the experts. Michel Leblanc, who was the one interviewing François Legault, he's the president of the Montreal Chamber of Commerce. He highlighted the shortages. And he said these numbers are clear. We need to work on this. He said that.
Wait, are you saying he agrees with less, or he's saying?
No, I'm saying Legault. I'm saying Leblanc completely disagrees with Legault. I'm saying Leblanc is saying that after Legault got this standing ovation for his presentation. The trained seals were inside of the Congress Hall there at the Montreal Chamber of Commerce. It was mostly stuffed with CAC campaign supporters, staffers, and candidates. But Leblanc quickly got up and said, "No, I disagree with what the CAC leader is saying." He's saying that he's been pressuring the government for months to increase the levels of new arrivals. Quebec needs minimum 64,000 immigrants to fill the current job vacancies right now. That's not including the future job vacancies we're going to have down the road. So it's not suicidal. It's not suicidal. And the need for more workers is the number one issue for the province when it comes to, because the economy, it touches us all. It's on our mind. And to use a word like suicidal is just completely ridiculous. The risk we are living with now is the weakening of companies that want to grow, that want to accept contracts, that want to export, and that need people to fill these posts. The objective is to integrate them, and they want to be integrated, and they want to be made comfortable. And we want to make sure they learn French, but I think they do want to learn French. But we need more immigrants, and we need to have all the help we can get in this regards there. And that's the message that's coming from Michel Leblanc. That is the message coming from the Quebec business community. And again, it's completely at the contrary of what Mr. Legault has been saying.
Here's the problem. I mean, for me, I mean, it's been in my mind the entire day. As my family immigrated here, yours as well. You know that immigration, I think everyone knows that immigration in Quebec is one giant success story. And what people should know is that immigration to Quebec is a pretty complex process, right? Quebec has a pretty strong hold on the selection process. And in that
more so than any other province.
And in that selection process, it's a point system. And the biggest portion of that point system is on the French language. So whoever the government actually selects to immigrate, and we're not talking about people seeking refugee status and people coming from war-torn countries, which does happen, or a family sponsorship, and I forget what the term there, réunification familiale there. The majority of the immigrants that come here are selected by the government. They're selected based on the fact that they already speak French or have an understanding of the language. So the fact that the Minister of Immigration says that they don't speak French, first of all, reflects badly on what you've been doing as a job. Why have you been taking them if they don't speak French? Number one. And it's just wrong. I just do not understand. And the fact that Premier Legault just continues on this path of putting aside the facts and focusing on the sensitivity to the nationalism, to the nationalist core of his supporters, to me is very dangerous. I don't know. I find it fascinating that a premier actually puts aside the numbers and the facts, and you have the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Montreal, the economic engine of the province, telling you, we've done our studies, we've done our research, this is what we need, help us. And he's saying, fuck you, I have to please my base, which has no understanding about immigration, and they're just proud Quebecers. The French language needs to be protected.
And keep in mind too, this is not the first time that Jean Boulet has come into making controversies in his domain of immigration, his ministry responsible for immigration. I remind you, he's also the minister responsible for social solidarity.
Social solidarity, exactly.
And doing a great job there, Jean. In any case,
like all three things were affected by one little statement: immigration, employment, and social solidarity.
Read the room. Read the room, buddy. And in any case, he did in 2021, at the end of 2021, he did imply that asylum seekers coming into Quebec were bringing with them COVID-19. And he was worried about the arrival of refugees via Roxham Road, which I think is obviously a concern.
Yes.
But in the midst of a pandemic, and he asked the federal government to close the route because he was concerned that so many of these asylum seekers coming in could have COVID. And again, it reeks of attempts to rally that base, to rally the CAQ supporters and to secure them. And I get it. I understand to a certain degree the political strategy here in terms of he's worried that the PQ is on the rise there, and usually they've tapped into this type of messaging before on immigration. Again, very negative messaging. The Conservative Party of Quebec, new player in town, they're also pretty tight when it comes to immigration. But again, Duhaime sort of is smart because he also he won't attack Anglophones. He won't attack allophones in this way. He'll say, well, Mr. Legault will always attack Anglophone immigration, or will always attack non-Francophone immigration. And he sort of nuances it there. And so it's interesting to see that how he differentiates himself. But in any case, this is bad. Again, end result here, I think that this is the CAQ bites the hand that feeds Quebec. And they do that by attacking immigrants. They know that this is wrong, but I think they also understand that we need to understand this is in their key messaging. This is the type of stuff that amongst candidates and in their meeting they say, what is working on the ground when you're speaking to voters? What is the type of messaging that's working when you're hitting the doors and you're riding?
Mm.
And this could very well be the case that it is working in this case. And that this could have been, I very well imagine that this could be some of the rhetoric that Jean Boulet was saying when speaking to, people in his riding that
His
he's born on.
constituents, exactly.
Yeah. So we have to be cognizant of that too. And again, his mea culpa was poor. He's not going to find himself in cabinet. Legault it has to take responsibility for his comments in the Chamber of Commerce. Again, the suicide thing is just really, really
I didn't see anywhere him addressing that or coming back on that during.
He's not. He's not. He's only been throwing Jean Boulet under the bus because he knows he can use him as the scapegoat, and it's pathetic.
Speaking of Éric Duhaime, there's some things that came up as well. And you're right, he's not really focusing on the immigration thing. I'm not so sure he knows where he's positioned, but he has taken a position on Bill 21. Bill 21, for those listening or watching, is the law that passed on secularism, which bans religious symbols in not only in the public sector, but people of certain authority. And he agrees with that fully. And he was recently doing an interview on CJAD, which is the English radio station here in Montreal, and he was asked about Bill 21. What did he say there, Michael?
Well, I mean, in the short snippet there, and this was an attack ad that was put out by the campaign of Elizabeth Prass, who's running for the Quebec Liberal Party in Darcy-McGee. She's a friend of ours, someone who we've known through politics for many years, and has definitely earned her time to now sit in caucus after having worked as a staff for two economic development ministers in Quebec City, Raymond Bachand and Clément Gignac. And I think this is smart because I think you're going at you're sort of uncovering and exploring things that certain, I think, Anglophones don't know, and especially people in the constituency of Darcy-McGee, for example, aren't aware of. But again, he was asked specifically by guest host David Hurtel, Éric Duhaime was, about what about Bill 21? And again, he conflated, a kippa, and in the scenario that Mr. Hurtel put Éric Duhaime in the full clip was, if you're in a hospital and if you need to be treated, what would you do in this circumstance here? Is a Jewish doctor wearing a kippa at the Jewish General Hospital, or at any hospital for that matter in Montreal, does that show a bias? And for Mr. Duhaime, the answer was yes, it does. It does show a bias. And there were other parts of this very, bizarre sort of interview that he did where he had mentioned that, well, no, as a homosexual, I don't know how I would be perceived by a doctor, a Jewish doctor wearing a kippah. He would have prejudice against me.
Complete nonsense.
I'm paraphrasing, but you imagine that the irony of somebody saying, well, their kippah is prejudicial against me. Well, what about the prejudice that you're putting upon the doctor wearing a kippah? Because that seems pretty prejudicial itself right there. And again, to what he was alluding to is that this Jewish doctor, who is obviously a man of faith and a man who is openly religious, this is very hypothetical, by the way, this didn't actually happen, but that this doctor would be a homophobe and would not give him the same standard of service as somebody who is a non-Jewish doctor, or somebody who wasn't wearing a religious symbol. That's what he was implying, and that it shows a bias. And again, it goes to show the disconnect. Again, Duhaime is not originally, he spent years in Quebec City. He's a shock jock radio host from there. He obviously connects, I would say, more with that type of mindset of Quebec City, where it's rare that you see a religious Jew wearing a kippah. It's rare that you find a Jew in Quebec City in that circumstance there. It's rare that you find an Anglophone over in Quebec City. So that disconnect there, I think, is pretty disturbing. I know that it's been very difficult for some of his candidates, especially Anglophone candidates, and candidates like Bonnie Fakenbaum, who's running against Liz Prass for the Conservative Party of Quebec in Darcy-McGee. It's been difficult to sort of, play the contortionist and trying to get out of, defending.
Yeah, I mean, they're on thin ice. They're on thin ice. And just for everyone's information there, watching or listening, Darcy-McGee is the Probably, well, there's many
It
ridings,
is
but
the
I would
Jewish
say it's
riding.
the riding in Quebec that has the largest concentration of Jewish citizens, electors. And yeah, I mean, we both know Bonnie Feigenbaum as well. A frustrated liberal that went over to the Conservative Party of Quebec with Éric Duhaime, and now she's kind of skating on thin ice with these statements. I mean, how is she knocking on doors to the Jewish people and telling them, we're the party for you, when your leader says, look, drop your kippah and we don't care. We believe fully in the secularism bill in Quebec.
Well, I could tell you it didn't go over well with the town of Hampstead
Mm.
city council when she met with them. I remind you, the majority of the people on that council do wear kippahs, when they're out and about doing their business. And you could just imagine that. And I remind you that she also brought Eric Duhaime to meet with the town of Hampstead City Council when she was invited to meet them as well. I think hoping to perhaps
Build a bridge or something.
build
Yeah.
a bridge and also say, look, I've got the leader of my party here today. He took some time off from his campaign to come meet with you. Did not go down well. And so again, and they questioned him on the question of the Keepa, and they questioned him when it came to his position on Bill 21. And his answers were, I'll give him this, authentic and honest, but they did not bode well
Yeah.
with the positioning of the vast majority of the voters that Bonnie has to convince in order to win. She won't be able to. The Liberals will obviously, have a bit of a decline in Darcy McGee in itself. It's going to be tighter, but there's still going to be a 20 to 30% spread between, let's say, the Conservative Party of Quebec and the Liberals, with the Liberals being on top there.
All right. Let's stay on Éric Duhaime, because he made another statement about him potentially making it to government, which we don't think is possible. Something strange about the composition of his cabinet.
Yeah, I think it sends a really strong message, and that message is that he wants to keep, the current cabinet is about 27 ministers, and Duhaime is a great communicator, because he does this press conference right outside, next to the National Assembly, but right outside the Ministry for the Executive Council. This is the Privy Council of Quebec. This is the Premier's ministry, the Premier's department. They support him in his day-to-day work. And, every Wednesday they come in, or almost every Wednesday, every week they come in, the ministers, their limousines, they park all along that street there in front of the apartment, and with their limousines. They're not actual limousines as you're imagining, but
Black
again,
cars.
black
Black
cars.
cars.
They're usually upgraded minivans. Okay,
Yeah.
the same thing you'd find for a soccer mom in any case. My point being is that it's a great image, and you've probably seen it on TV at one point or another, seeing these limousines pop up. So there's 27 of them, one for every minister and the premier. And Duhaime came out and said, we don't need 27 ministers and limousines to manage Quebec. And I'm challenging all parties to commit to reducing the size of the next provincial cabinet to a bare minimum. And again, what is the reasoning for this? Families are being hit hard by the pandemic. They're struggling with inflation. It went up 7% last month, rising mortgage rates. Quebec households are being deprived of thousands of dollars a year and are struggling to meet the basic needs such as food, housing, clothing, soaring debt. And the solution cannot be to put Quebecers in even more debt. And he recognized from the get-go, was like, listen, I recognize that this is symbolic. I know that this is not going to save a massive amount of money for the Quebec state, but it shows that we care. And it shows that we can make a difference. And, he used examples. He basically said, hey, so we're going to take it from 27. Let's cap it to 20. That's a reduction of 7 ministers right there. And he used, for example, how can we group certain ministers together to save costs? The posts of, let's say, delegate ministers could be abolished. These are associate ministers.
Mm-hmm.
Different provinces have different names for them. And in the rest of Canada, they're usually called associate ministers. So they're junior ministers, ministers of state. Over in Ottawa, that we'll call them, and over here in Quebec, we call them delegate ministers in a sense. So, for example, he would get rid of the minister's delegate for health and social services, for transport, for education, for economy, and loop them back in to their main ministry, and the minister responsible for that ministry itself, the minister who leads that ministry, would then assume that power instead of delegating it to an associate minister. And again, I think it sends a strong signal. Eric is saying that he wants to reduce cabinet because of the current burden that Quebecers are living with right now. He wants to reduce to 20. I think this is something that bodes well with people. I think no matter where you are, be it in Quebec City, where he's obviously targeting for some seats, or be it in Montreal, I think people say, hey, listen, would you like to see a reduction of cabinet ministers, limiting the pig's trough to a certain extent? I think it could work.
You having been up in Quebec City, how do you feel about that? Because I think that it's a question of efficiency. The fact that certain big ministries are kind of split and you have delegate ministers to kind of...
But nobody knows that. Nobody understands that.
Because see, this is the thing, right? About Éric Duhaime's communication skills in presenting something, but not showing the logic behind the way things are now. You cannot have a health minister assume that gigantic department, which takes over 50% of
especially during COVID, right? Especially during COVID.
Exactly. Manage everything on his own or her own. It's I don't want to say it's impossible, but I can't see that happening. I mean, it's too huge for them to do that. So health and social services has always been kind of these two departments under one umbrella. So there's always been kind of like a delegate minister that takes care of the social services aspect, and the minister of health that takes care of the big chunk of it. There's the same thing happening in education, which is another.
Do we need a minister for sport, for example? Do we need a minister of sport? Can we tag on?
But that's always paired with education and sport, right? Or is there
because right now we have a minister responsible for sport who's also the minister responsible for the status of women.
Oh yeah, what's her name? The former Olympian.
He's
right. You're right. I'm thinking back in the day that used to be one cabinet under the Minister of Education. It was education, sport, and leisure back in the day.
Could we not, for example, could you not merge, like they do in Alberta, like they do in other provinces?
That would make sense, though. That would make sense.
Yeah, but if merging, for example, finance with Treasury Board, that's done in a lot of Western Prairie provinces. It works effectively. Travis Taves, who was the outgoing minister for Treasury Board and Finance, he did that for his entire tenure in the Kenney government.
Back when I started, those were together. Raymond Bachand was both finance minister and president of the Treasury Board.
Yeah.
But it was two separate cabinets, but under one minister, though. I don't know how he did it, but they were under one person's responsibility.
Right. So, I mean, I understand that maybe some of the examples that he was giving were not the best, but I think they definitely... from a communication standpoint, I think he was trying to build some support and trying to sensitize Quebecers to the fact that, listen, you don't need this much. There is a limit.
Michael, I think it's useless because the budgets, regardless, are going to go to these departments.
For sure. But the point is, I think that it's a great, the way that he built the imaging behind this, the look at the luxurious limousines that come here every week.
Yeah.
And you've got these and the waste that goes on behind it. Look at this. I want to reduce the size of cabinet. I think for a conservative, this is red meat for conservative voters, small C conservative voters.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a way to really tap into some of the people that are like, you know what, I like the CAC. I'm more conservative leaning. But Duhaime, I really haven't seen him, emphasizing too much on the on cuts and being fiscally responsible. This is something that might push me over the edge and saying, well, why the hell does Legault have an associate minister for that or a delegate minister for that? That's ridiculous. I'm going to either not going to be voting. I might not be voting for the CAC, or this might push me a certain way is what I'm saying. And I think the way that he structured the communication aspect of it was really well done and impressive.
This is one of the things where if tomorrow by some magic whatever he makes it to government, it would be probably the one thing that he would not go forward with, he would realize instantly that it's unsustainable. It's unmanageable. Like, just in terms of efficiency, you need these.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But we've seen this exercise done before. And again, Alberta, when a Rachel Notley came in 2015, she cut the size of cabinet in half, practically.
Yeah.
She named half the cabinet her predecessor named. And again, I think it is possible. I think that it would lead to increasing the size of the bureaucracy in effect, because you would have more bureaucrats doing more work instead of political staff, for example. And again, you'd be ceding a lot of that that responsibility towards the bureaucracy, and you could in effect be creating a larger bureaucracy in itself. But again, it's symbolically, I think it's a smart way to frame the debate, and it's a smart way to frame waste and cutting the fat inside of government. And I have to commend Duhaime for that.
Let's move on over to a story happening in a riding in Laval, Chomedey, particularly. We've spoken about this. I'm not sure if we've spoken on the episodes or off air. We've spoken about the real possibility that the CAQ completely takes over the island of Laval, except maybe for Chomedey, which is still a liberal stronghold. Although I think they're gonna see that margin kind of reduced there between the Liberals and the CAQ, which is obviously going to come in second place. There's a story that came out in La Presse today. This is just so we can set the stage. Chomedey, the former MNA in Chomedey, Guy Ouellet, immediately after the last election in 2008, was kicked out of caucus because of certain things happening. Allegedly, he was leaking information from the Liberals to the CAQ, to Legault, and we found that out during the campaign. It was too late to replace him. So everyone knew that as soon as they went back in the House, he would be out of the caucus, which is exactly what happened. So he spent 4 years sitting as an independent MNA. And yeah, sorry, that was just news coming up there. So he was sitting as an independent, and so everyone knew that seat in Chomedey would be open. Obviously, because it's a winnable riding, there was a huge interest in that riding. There were people that were suggesting to the party not to run an open nomination, to demonstrate some sort of leadership and to put a good, strong candidate, because it's a winnable riding and because you need strong people in the caucus. The party went the other direction and they did an open nomination. I feel like they frustrated the base, because it's obviously a riding that has a huge concentration of ethnic voters, a lot of Greeks, a lot of Lebanese, a lot of Muslims, some Armenians, obviously a lot of Francophones as well, which aren't ethnics, but they're part of the composition there. And there were, I think, 3 or 4 candidates in that race. One of them was a Greek person. Another one was an Armenian who won the nomination. And then I think there was a Muslim and I believe a Lebanese candidate as well. I think there were 4 altogether. I know for a fact that that divided a lot of the people that were present over there. The Lebanese candidate won, Sona Lakoyan. And then today there's an article in the French paper, to the effect that the Greek candidate there, Peter Papadakis, was there was some dirty work being done.
Yeah.
There were some pamphlets that were distributed to the members that were a little derogatory towards Peter. I mean, look, I know Peter, he's a good guy. I'm not so sure if he's perfect for the role of an MNA, to be honest with you, but he's a good guy. And he was the president of the local Liberal Association in Chomedey as well. And he just didn't win. I don't think those pamphlets did any damage to him specifically. I just think that he wasn't able to mobilize as many members to come and vote for him. That's all. And yeah, so he came out saying that he's reflecting on what happened, and he may very well bring the Liberal Party to court, because he thinks that they didn't do much or enough to avoid this sort of situation. The party on their side says that, yeah, we were made aware, but we looked into it, we investigated, and we could not find who this came from, who was behind it. What do you think? I mean, you're in politics, man. You're in politics, and whether you're facing an adversary or whether you're facing your own colleagues, like in a nomination race, it could get dirty. It's part of the deal. I don't like it, but you got to accept it. That's how it works. And I mean, I don't think it should be working that way. I mean, you shouldn't be printing things that are negative towards someone else or that brings him down, but it's part of the reality. You're in politics. This is like part of the fine print,
Yeah.
that nobody reads, but it's there. It happens. So I just think that it's just his inability to mobilize, and it's not the first time he fails at this. I mean, he was running for the nomination in that same seat, but federally a couple years ago, and he lost it for the same reasons. He wasn't able to mobilize his members, and I do believe even then he felt that he was cheated, and he actually sued the Liberal Party of Canada. So I don't know if this is a thing that we're seeing repetitively from Peter. I just think in this situation, man, you just got to swallow that pill. And I know it's tough, dude. You're losing 2 nominations when you thought you had it in the bag. I know it's not easy, but suing parties now, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you think.
No, it's and this is a few things on this front here. Bringing it back to the basics, the idea that maybe certain ridings such as Chomedey, that's a relatively safe Liberal riding in Laval, more safe than the other 5, that's for sure. Should it be contested in a nomination race? Should it not be reserved, let's say, for the party leader to say, you know what, there's, let's say, 20 or 25 seats across Quebec that I want to make sure that I'm able to appoint, I can designate my candidate and put it there, because you can assure yourself of being able to build a cabinet with strong candidates and put them there, the people that you'll need. Doesn't mean that some other people in other ridings where there's nomination races where the race is going to be a little bit tighter, they won't be in an eventual cabinet themselves. It just means that you've got the basics and the basics put in place for you to actually have your cabinet come. If you form government. Now the PLQ is not going to form government, but let's just say hypothetically they were.
But you still need a strong caucus. You
need a strong team. Yeah. You need strong critics, right? You need strong critics to keep the government accountable on this front, and that's what's important here, right? So I think from this perspective that when you have, especially in a very diverse riding like Chomedey, when you have different ethnic groups working to mobilize their vote, you see who is really working to get out their vote. And I have to applaud certain communities for being able to demonstrate, you know what, I can get this done. I was surprised when the Armenian community was able to support the candidate who ended up winning in the end. It wasn't as clear to me that it was going to be the case for her. But this is the struggle you have to deal with. And then this, again, in regards to Peter and what he's thinking, this to me is, he just feels very sorry for himself and feels that he was cheated out. Again, negative campaigning is something I think that's fairly fresh and fairly new for a lot of people, especially people who have never been involved in politics before. It has existed in Quebec, but this American-style campagne de salissage that we're seeing, again, I don't think that's necessarily what we saw here, but it's becoming more and more predominant. And I think that people need to and again, it pushes people away, good people away, from wanting to put their hat into the ring and get involved in active politics. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the greater thing that we have to look at here is how is this type of stuff pushing people that are good quality candidates from wanting to get involved in public service. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes in to running in a race, and there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into, especially for business professionals, winning and having to dedicate 4 years plus to something like this.
Yeah. There's always this, this debate that happens during this process, and even the people at the party are divided on whether or not we should choose open nominations or just open conventions or a nomination.
Yeah,
and it divides the people.
I mean, you say a nomination, you mean like an appointment?
An appointment. Sorry, yeah. I'm more on the side of appointing people because it demonstrates your leadership. You know that you need 125 people. Maybe not do it all, in all ridings. I mean, have some open nominations, but I agree with you. In certain ridings that are winnable, you should demonstrate a certain sense of leadership and say, this is the type of people that I want to move forward in this next mandate. And I need to go find the people that fit specifically this mold, right? And you got to use these writings, I think, strategically that way. If you're the leader of the party, I can understand the other side saying that no, when you're doing a convention, it engages the membership, it gets people interested, and it brings money to the party. Yes, I agree. But between the two, I would still go to the side of the leadership demonstration over the convention, which we've seen in the past has split the membership. It's divided them, and not only that. I mean, people think that when you run an open nomination, a convention, everyone just comes together after and supports the person that's elected. It is not true. It's not true. We've seen this time and time again, where after conventions, the losing side just stays home. They don't come out.
Yeah.
And it takes a whole mandate to get them back in. We've seen this happen. And I don't know why, but it happens in writings that have this sort of composition like Chomedey does. And again, there were people that advised the party not to do that. We're not going to name names here, but one of them is on this podcast.
Go figure. I wonder. I don't think it's the guy with the last name that's not Greek. So anyway.
Yeah. So in any case, I mean, it just goes to demonstrate the weakness of the Liberal Party in this election. And there's small things like that are creeping out that are just indicators of the lack of leadership.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, just to wrap it up on that front, is the fact that the vast majority of funding now, especially for the PLQ, comes from taxpayer subsidies.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you have to balance, having these types of investitures. Will they bring in the cash? Will they not? Will memberships bring in the cash? Will they not? Or, and this is where I see it going, do you need high profile candidates that give the leader credibility in order to demonstrate to Quebecers that she has a solid team on the economic front, on the health front, on the on the justice front? You want to have these high quality candidates that, let's be frank, Anglade was not able to get as many as she wanted. Very, very few on that front there. Some here and there in some safe ridings that she appointed, but by and large, she's missing quite a few people in order to build that solid cabinet. If she were to form government on October 3rd, it's not going to be the case. But when you have that type of team in place, when you have them hitting the ground, when you have those news articles coming out saying, hey, I have a former head of the Barreau du Québec as my candidate, when I have the former head of this health system from this region running for me, or the head of a health association for a big professional order running for me in my campaign, that tells a story of I'm attracting good people on my side. Look at what I'm able to do. And then I can fundraise off that as well. But I can also attract voters. And every vote is a few dollars into my purse, into my war chest for the election campaign, or to keep the party sustained after the election itself, because that is how our new publicly funded taxpayer voter subsidy works. Do I agree with the system? Not necessarily, but it is a system that's in place, and parties need to learn to adapt to that reality.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen, but in any case, I really don't care, because they were warned. Anyway, let's move on over. Let's finish this up with polls. New poll that was conducted yesterday. Is it shocking? Is it not? I mean, is it surprising?
No, I think that especially with the rhetoric that we've been seeing over the course of the past little while, like I'll give you an example, with what we saw with Jean Boulet and what we've been seeing over the course of the past little while, it's not really. 1 in 3 Quebecers right now, about 34% say they would vote CAQ on October 3rd. 1 in 5 shows the Conservative Party at 19%. 16% say they would vote either Québec solidaire or for the Liberal Party, and 1 in 8, 12%, so they'd vote for the Parti québécois. So again, the CAQ still has their solid pathway to victory. They're running on 2 key issues that are very important to Quebecers: healthcare and the economy. But we have seen that for the first time from a major pollster like Angus Reid, the Conservatives coming in at 34%. That's the lowest they've polled this entire election
The
campaign.
CAC, you mean the CAC? Yeah.
The CAC, excuse me. What did I say?
The Conservatives.
The Conservative. There, same difference. So in any case, no, from François Legault's CAQ, need another cup of coffee. This is the lowest that they've been over the course of the entire electoral campaign, and that is, is it indicative of the the rhetoric from Jean Boulet or from François Legault when it comes to immigration? I don't know. Is it the debate to performances? Maybe. Maybe Legault didn't come off as solid as we thought he did.
But it's also the only one that has such a huge difference in the polling. Every other pollster, like if you look at Léger or anyone else, they're pretty much on the same page. This one is like they put the Conservatives second with 19%. That I don't know if it's off. I do want to go on record and say that from the very beginning, I've always thought that the Conservatives were underestimated. Maybe, of
course. And across the board, federally and in different provinces, conservative parties are always underestimated.
Yeah. When you see the chart, I'm like, who second? Really? Wow. Okay. Yeah. I've always thought they were underestimated, but
which I think is within the margin of error with the other parties too. I don't think it's that shocking. I mean, some other takeaways from the poll too is that no leader has been viewed positively by a majority of Quebecers. We know that healthcare, economy, climate change, these are the top issues. Men are more aligned on issues. Women have small variations in priorities. And again, while Legault and the CAQ are favored on healthcare and economy, Quebec Solidaire is coming out as most trusted on the environment. And we're talking about the Fonderie over in Rouyn-Noranda. That issue has definitely been percolating and maybe making a lot of Quebecers think, okay, I don't know if I really trust these guys when it comes to the economy. When it comes to environment, but definitely when it comes to healthcare and economy, I'm favoring more the CAQ.
But it's fascinating because despite this controversy in Rouyn-Noranda on the Foundry, the CAQ is still coming in first in the polls up there. They might win that seat from Quebec Solidaire, which is.
And Legault coming out this week and saying, well, you know what, it's the issue up in Rouyn-Noranda, it's not as bad as people are saying. It's not really that bad. A lot of people might have looked at it as dismissive, but I think that it really has been a story that's died out over the course of the past couple of weeks. We're talking less and less of it. And it hasn't stayed consistent where, again, it's really difficult for the Minister of the Environment, Benoit Charette, to intervene in a dossier of this nature during an election campaign. Really, just so people know, the ministries right now are in caretaker mode. It is left to the department heads, the deputy ministers, the heads of the bureaucracy to keep the state of government going, to keep the bus moving without the involvement of ministers. And again, they might be kept aware or apprised of certain issues and what's going on that front, but the decisional authority of ministers is pretty much revoked over the course of the 30 some odd days of the campaign. So you have to keep that in mind, that yes, they're kept apprised of on a need to know basis of what is going on, but they can't really intervene. And that would be the same thing for the Minister of the Environment in this circumstance here. The only exception to a certain degree would be, let's say,
there's like a national emergency or whatever.
Well, which is what we saw in the Gaspésie, right?
Exactly.
With Fiona. So with Hurricane Fiona over there, that was obviously a major involvement by Geneviève Guilbeault, the Minister of Public Security. But that was also for the sake of, a photo op too. And listen, do I think it was wrong for her to be there? No, I think it's important to demonstrate
she had to.
Was on the ground. But it also did look, let's be very frank here, it did look good for the cameras as well. Every team, every political team wants that kind of imagery during an election. If a problem like it's terrible that a problem like this happened, but I do want to make sure that my minister, my candidate, is on the ground acting in her role as Minister of Public Security. Anybody would expect that.
Exactly. All right, let's wrap this up. Wag of the finger, tip of the hat moments.
Well, it has to be the CAQ on immigration. This could kill. This could be the difference between them scoring, and again, 85 seats versus 100 seats, right? As long as they get their magic number of 63 seats, which is the majority inside of the Quebec National Assembly, the CAQ is going to be fine.
Yeah.
The GO is going to be fine. Blessing in disguise, albeit that it was disgusting what Boulet said on immigration, what Legault said on immigration. It goes against my very principles as somebody who wants to welcome people into this province and believes that immigrants make Quebec better. They make Canada better. They have a place in our society. him clocking in at a lower, getting a lower number of seats could be better for Legault, just by the simple fact that he's going to have a lot of disappointed caucus members when he forms his Conseil des Ministres. And when he's forming his Conseil des Ministres, it's much easier to form it, let's say with 27 or 30. Maybe he'll expand it up into 30, 35, let's say, which is possible for him, which is what Doug Ford did. It's much easier to promise 30, 35, ministers some roles from the caucus there when you have 85 caucus members as opposed to 100. The 15 less disappointed faces that you'll have to deal with and throw it on the bone over the course of your 4-year mandates. Legault's very good in terms of giving his giving his caucus members that are non-ministerial specific mandates, naming them parliamentary assistant for economy. Well, I want you to focus on economic development in this region here, because I feel that it's really important. That's something that we haven't been doing well. Naming a parliamentary secretary responsible for ensuring that Quebec has a good internet capacity in rural areas and rural regions of the province itself, and ensuring that those regions are now connected. And with the advent of social media, it's important that we are able to communicate with these people effectively, and naming a parliamentary secretary responsible for that. So I think that albeit that the comments are disgusting, he's maybe shot himself in the foot. He might not get the results he was maybe clocked in to get at the beginning of this campaign. A little bit under 100 seats.
It's still more than what he left.
Doing well. For sure. He's still coming out on top.
So for him, regardless, it's a victory.
It's a victory either way, and it's a victory in terms of stakeholder management internally for your team when having to make those ministerial appointments.
Yeah. Tip of the hat.
This week has been so muddied. I have to give again a tip of the hat to Dominique Anglade, because I think she did stick on message. She's taking some hard punches. Polling is terrible for her. She's having, to deal with a lack of volunteers on the ground. But her message has stayed consistent. And her messaging has stayed consistent throughout the campaign. And I feel that, especially in the second debate, she did come back swinging and was able to land a few punches here. I feel terrible for her. I feel terrible for any leader that's in this capacity right now of literally being, being presiding over the funeral for a major political party, because that's the death blow that's going to be hit come October 3rd. But I do feel that she has been able to maintain her messaging throughout the campaign, especially towards the latter end. She's not giving up. She's doing, I think, more events than other party leaders from looking at their schedules. I've been pretty impressed. So kudos to her in terms of being able to maintain that.
And there you have it, folks. That wraps it up for today's episode. We will see you again on Monday, Election Day. We're gonna talk about, I don't know, whatever has happened over the weekend and that specific day. Hopefully, we'll be able to come back with another episode to comment on the results, which will be fun for you. But yeah, see you all on October the 3rd, Election Day. Thank you all so much, and have a good day. Take care, Mike.
Take it easy. Vote early, vote often. Just don't vote twice. That's illegal.